Mary Wilson's apartment in a quiet, upscale Boston neighborhood spoke volumes about her talent as an interior designer. The space, where vintage and contemporary designs harmonized beautifully, reflected her impeccable taste down to the smallest detail. In the 5 years since launching Wilson Interior Design, Mary had become one of the most sought-after designers in the area. She had earned the trust of young professionals in particular, and clients seeking her distinctive style were never in short supply. Behind this success, however, Mary carried a private pain. It centered around her relationship with her family, especially the complicated sisterly bond with Deborah. When her phone rang displaying the mom on the screen, Mary hesitated momentarily before taking a deep breath and answering. Finally, you pick up. Carol's voice carried its usual impatience. Did you receive the invitation to Deborah's baby shower? Yes, it arrived yesterday. Mary gazed at the pale pink invitation sitting on her windowsill. Of course I'm planning to attend. That's good. Deborah was worried you might not come. Mary smiled wryly. Rather than worry, Deborah had probably hoped she wouldn't attend. Their relationship had been complicated since childhood, and the divide had deepened since their father's sudden death from a heart attack. What gift are you thinking of giving? Carol's question carried its customary testing tone. I haven't decided yet. My goodness, it's less than 2 weeks away. Deborah and Richard have nearly finished preparing the nursery. Carol's words contained an implicit comparison. Richard is so generous. He brought in a special designer from New York to create the most luxurious baby room you can imagine. Mary listened in silence. Deborah's husband, Richard Kennedy, was a young executive at a rapidly growing real estate development company on the East Coast. Their wedding had been the talk of local society and featured in magazines. Mary, meanwhile, remained single and focused on her career, something that clearly disappointed her mother. By the way, Deborah mentioned seeing photos of that new hotel lobby you designed. It was interesting. Carol's words carried a subtle sarcasm. That was the modern style my client wanted, Mom. It was very well received, Mary replied calmly. I suppose young people's tastes are changing, Carol said. But classic beauty has timeless value. Oh, and have you heard about the lakeside cottage Deborah's been dreaming of? Richard is looking for one as a surprise. They want to spend summers there after the baby arrives. Mary's heart skipped a beat. A lakeside cottage. It had been Deborah's dream since childhood. Her sister always cherished those summer memories of swimming in the lake together. He hasn't bought one yet? They can't seem to find the right property. But I'm sure they will soon. Richard gives Deborah everything she wants. After ending the call, Mary went to her desk and pulled out a file labeled Beechwood Lake Property. These were the documents for a lakeside cottage she had secretly purchased last year. Mary had cut into her apartment down payment funds and taken out a loan to buy it, an investment that jeopardized her own financial security. She hadn't bought the cottage for herself. It was meant to be the ultimate gift for Deborah. Over the years, Mary had made various attempts to repair their relationship, but Deborah's jealousy and competitiveness had stood in the way. As a child, Deborah had deliberately broken Mary's favorite dolls and minimized her achievements at school. Their mother Carol had consistently taken Deborah's side, urging Mary to give in as the older sister. Initially, Mary had intended to give the cottage to Deborah directly. Recently, however, she had come up with a more personal approach. She decided to create a handmade photo album containing childhood pictures of the sisters, photos of the cottage, the key, and the deed of transfer. It wasn't meant to be just a material gift, but a heartfelt expression of her love and desire for reconciliation. Mary gazed at the photos spread across her desk. One showed Deborah on her 8th birthday at the lake with their father. Another captured a rare moment of harmony when the teenage sisters stood side by side, smiling. Then there were the latest pictures of the cottage Mary had renovated with an architect. White exterior walls with blue window frames, a spacious deck, and large windows facing the lake, exactly the kind of home Deborah had always dreamed of. This is for your family, Deborah, Mary whispered. So your child won't grow up the way we did. She began preparing the album, hoping in her heart that her sister would understand the true value of this gift. Yet from experience, she also knew such expectations could be dangerous. Still, she couldn't help but try. It would be her final attempt to mend the family bonds. On the day of the baby shower, Mary headed to Deborah and Richard's mansion carrying the carefully wrapped photo album. Inside the handmade album were photos of the sisters' memories, beautiful pictures of the lakeside cottage, and most importantly, the contract and key. As she drove, her heart was filled with both anticipation and anxiety. The Kennedy mansion in Brookline's upscale neighborhood was especially festive that day. A banner reading, "Welcome Baby Kennedy," hung over the front entrance, with pink and gold balloons swaying in the breeze. Before ringing the doorbell, Mary checked her outfit. Her simple navy dress was the best she could afford, but it might seem inadequate for the world she was about to enter. When Carol opened the door, a subtle look of disappointment crossed her face. She looked her daughter up and down, clearly wanting to say something. "Couldn't you have dressed up a bit more?" "Today is Deborah's special day," she said. "Hello, Mom." "This is the best I could do," Mary replied, maintaining her composure. Carol sighed as she invited her in. The interior of the mansion exceeded Mary's imagination. Crystal chandeliers, luxurious furniture, and decorations perfectly coordinated by a professional event planner. Everything looked Instagram perfect. About 20 guests had already gathered in the living room. Most wore designer clothes and sparkling jewelry. Mary felt acutely out of place. Her gift also appeared modest compared to the lavishly wrapped packages from high-end department stores piled nearby. "Oh, Mary." Deborah's voice called from across the room. 8 months pregnant, Deborah wore an elegant dress that belied her condition, complete with high heels. She approached Mary slowly. "So you finally came." "Everyone, this is my sister Mary. She works as an interior designer." Deborah's voice carried a hint of disdain. "For a small local company." Mary tried to maintain her smile. "You look well, Deborah. You're truly beautiful, even while pregnant." "Thank you," Deborah proudly displayed herself. "Carrying Richard's baby is the most wonderful experience. He takes such good care of me." The conversation remained superficial, and Mary sat in a corner trying not to draw attention. Deborah's friends showed no interest in her. Occasionally, they cast curious glances her way, but only to observe the contrast between her modest attire and Deborah. "It's gift time," the event planner announced loudly. Deborah sat in a special chair in front of the table and began opening her gifts. A silver baby photo frame, a Montessori wooden toy set, a cashmere baby blanket, a designer baby clothes collection. Each reveal was met with sounds of admiration. When Mary's turn came, the room grew oddly quiet. She stood up shyly and handed Deborah the simply wrapped box. "This is from me," Mary said softly. Deborah tore open the wrapping and pulled out the handmade photo album. The cover read, "Rare Memories and New Beginnings," in handwriting. Deborah held the album, frowning just at the cover. "Handmade?" Deborah laughed through her nose. "So tacky. The baby doesn't need something like this." Then, without opening the album, she tossed it toward a wastebasket that had been placed aside. The album hit the edge of the bin and fell to the floor. After a moment of silence, several guests began to snicker. "Really, no sense of style," Carol shrugged. "Can't you even give a proper gift?" Mary felt her face growing hot. Humiliation, anger, and deep sadness washed over her simultaneously. She was shocked that Deborah hadn't even bothered to check the contents of her gift. That album contained the key and deed to a cottage she had staked her financial future on. "If that's how you feel," Mary said quietly. She slowly stood up and picked up the album from the floor. For a moment, she considered opening it to show Deborah the truth. But she decided that wouldn't be appropriate for this setting. "Congratulations, Deborah. I sincerely wish happiness for you and your baby." With those words, Mary quietly left the room. Behind her, the laughter and conversation resumed. Her absence would hardly be noticed. In the entrance hall, she passed one of the catering staff. The young woman gave her a sympathetic look. "Are you okay?" she asked in a low voice. Mary forced a smile. Yes, I'm fine. Thank you. That was a lovely album, she said sincerely. To throw it away without even opening it. Mary nodded gratefully. You're Kelly, right? I designed your catering company's website before. Yes. You remembered. Kelly responded happily. You did wonderful work. Our business has been growing rapidly thanks to you. Mary showed her first genuine smile. I'm glad to hear that. Keep up the good work. On her way home, Mary gripped the steering wheel tightly as she thought. Her gift hadn't reached Deborah. But perhaps that was for the best. Maybe this cottage should become a new beginning for Mary herself. Arriving home, Mary quietly placed the album on her table. The photos of the lakeside cottage beautifully reflected the light. I haven't decided yet, she whispered softly. Whether I should tell Deborah the truth. A week later, Deborah was relaxing on her sofa at home. Richard was away on business, and she was enjoying some quiet time alone. Though her morning sickness had subsided and her energy returned, her growing belly made movement cumbersome. The doorbell rang, and Deborah checked the monitor curiously. A young woman she didn't recognize stood there holding a small box. Yes, who is it? Deborah asked through the intercom. Express delivery. I have a package from Ms. Mary Wilson. Deborah was surprised. A package from Mary? She hadn't contacted her sister since the baby shower. After that embarrassing incident, she had assumed Mary would be angry, so a gift from her was unexpected. One moment, please. Deborah disabled the security system and walked to the entrance. Opening the door, she realized it was Kelly. You're from that party. Yes, Kelly Martin, she smiled politely. My catering company had our website designed by Mary, and she specially asked me to deliver this to you. Deborah accepted the box with confusion. It wasn't very heavy, just slightly larger than the handmade album from the baby shower. A message from Mary, Kelly handed her a small card. Take care. After Kelly left, Deborah returned to the living room with the box. The card had only it to Deborah, for the beginning of your new life, written in her sister's handwriting. Deborah opened the box with a twinge of guilt. Inside was that same photo album she had discarded at the shower. Deborah frowned. Was this Mary's way of making her feel bad? For a moment, she considered throwing it away again, but something held her back. I might as well look at it. Reluctantly, Deborah opened the album. The first page read, Our Memories, and featured childhood photos of the sisters. Deborah felt nostalgic as she turned the pages. Family photos when their father was still alive, pictures from writing lessons they took together, teenage birthday parties. The next page contained photos of Beechwood Lake they had visited as children. This lake. Deborah whispered. She remembered the happy summer memories from childhood. She recalled how she'd always said, when I grow up, I want a house by the lake, and how often she'd mentioned it to Richard. Turning the page, she suddenly saw photos of a beautiful, unfamiliar lakeside cottage. White exterior walls with blue window frames, a spacious deck, and large windows facing the lake. It was exactly the kind of house she had dreamed of. This is. The next page contained real estate purchase documents and a key to the house. The contract clearly stated, owner, Mary Wilson, but a handwritten note read, to Deborah, the lake house you've always dreamed of. Congratulations on your new beginning. Deborah's hands began to tremble. Was this real? She checked the date on the contract. It was from last year. Mary had purchased this house a year ago. And she had tried to give it to her at the baby shower. In that album that Deborah had thrown away without even looking inside. The room seemed to spin. Deborah sank deep into the sofa, feeling her baby move. Tears welled up in her eyes. For years, she had looked down on Mary, been jealous of her, and sometimes deliberately hurt her. And now, Mary had tried to fulfill her greatest dream. With shaking hands, Deborah picked up her phone and dialed her mother's number. Mom, I did something terrible, she said through tears. Deborah? What's wrong? Is the baby okay? Carol's voice was filled with concern. The baby's fine. I was awful, Deborah stammered as she explained the album's contents and what had happened at the baby shower. On the other end of the line, Carol fell silent. Mom? I was. Carol's voice was small. I was awful too. We shouldn't have treated Mary that way. Mother and daughter shared a long silence over the phone. Both were reflecting on their attitudes toward Mary. I need to call Mary, Deborah said urgently. I need to apologize. She immediately dialed Mary's cell number, but the call went to voicemail. Mary, it's me. I saw the album. Please call me back. Please. Deborah then called her sister's apartment, but there was no answer. Growing anxious, she contacted Richard. Richard, something terrible has happened, she explained the situation. Calm down, Deborah, Richard's voice was steady. I'll try contacting Mary's office. An hour later, Richard called back. Mary has taken a week's vacation. The people at her office don't know where she is. Deborah felt her chest tighten. She paced the room alone and opened the album again. On the last page, alongside interior photos of the lakeside cottage, was a handwritten message. To Deborah. I hope this cottage will be filled with happy memories for you, the baby, and Richard. May your child swim in the lake and grow up surrounded by nature, just like we did as children. With love, Mary. Deborah quietly cried as she read the message. Despite all the ways Deborah had hurt and antagonized her, Mary had always continued to love her. For years, Deborah had established her identity by playing the role of the wealthy sister to Mary's plain sister. But now, that dynamic had completely crumbled. Mary had always had the bigger heart. Over the next few days, Deborah desperately searched for Mary. Her apartment was vacant, and neighbors said she had gone on an extended trip. Her colleagues didn't know the details either. Deborah slipped letters under Mary's door and left messages every day. Mary, I'm truly sorry. Please let me talk to you. I finally understand how much you've loved me all this time. Please contact me when you return. Some nights, Deborah fell asleep clutching the album. Something was beginning to change within her. The jealousy and competitiveness she had harbored for years were transforming into deep regret and gratitude toward her sister. Come back, Mary, Deborah whispered, gazing out the window. Let me start over. Deborah's due date was drawing near. Her belly had grown large, making movement difficult, but she continued searching for Mary. Each time she visited Mary's apartment, she left a new letter. Sometimes she sat in front of the door for hours, hoping her sister might suddenly return. Any progress? Carol asked over the phone one day. Nothing, Deborah answered wearily. The people at her company won't say much. Just that Mary is on leave for personal reasons. Poor thing, must be deeply hurt, Carol's voice contained a guilt never heard before. We were truly awful. Carol was changing too. She had visited Mary's design company website and, for the first time, seriously looked at her daughter's work. There, Mary's tremendous talent and creativity were evident. Carol realized how one-sided her perspective had been. Mom, have you ever thought about how much we've hurt Mary over the years? Deborah gazed out the window. I've always tried to pull her down. Instead of celebrating her success, I was jealous and looked down on her. I'm just as guilty, Carol quietly admitted. Rather than recognizing her talent and efforts, I always compared her to you. Silence enveloped them both. But why would Mary still give such a wonderful gift? Deborah wondered. Perhaps that's what true love is, Carol said softly. Love without conditions. That weekend, Richard began contacting Mary's friends and colleagues to help Deborah. One day, he obtained important information from a client. There's a charity event Mary is scheduled to attend, Richard excitedly told Deborah. A gala dinner at the Boston Museum of Fine Arts next Saturday, supporting young artists. I have to go, Deborah said immediately. But your due date is only 2 weeks away, Richard said worriedly. I don't care. This might be my last chance. That night, Deborah called her mother. Mom, I've found Mary. She'll be at the museum gala. I'm coming too, Carol said without hesitation. Saturday night, the Boston Museum of Fine Arts was elegantly adorned. It was an event bringing together notable figures from the art world, wealthy donors, and young artists. Deborah entered the venue supporting her large belly, assisted by her mother and Richard. Can you see her? Deborah scanned the crowd. Then she spotted her across the room. Mary was wearing a sophisticated black dress, engaged in animated conversation with young artists. Her expression was bright and confident. Deborah hadn't noticed before, but her sister truly radiated beauty. There she is, Deborah said softly. The three slowly made their way toward Mary. Mary noticed them only when they were too close for her to retreat. Her expression froze. Mary, Deborah called with a trembling voice. For a moment, Mary seemed to have an impulse to flee. But there were many people around. She took a deep breath and regained her composure. Deborah, Mom, Richard, she said calmly. I didn't expect to see you here. Please let me talk to you, Deborah pleaded. This isn't the appropriate place, Mary looked around. My clients are here. Please, Mary. Just 5 minutes. Mary considered briefly, then nodded slightly. In the lobby. The four left the event hall and moved to the quieter lobby. Mary stood with her arms crossed, taking a defensive posture. Deborah did something unexpected. She suddenly knelt before Mary. Mary was surprised and tried to support her, given her large belly. What are you doing? Stand up. I won't, Deborah said through tears. Mary, I've been the worst sister. I never appreciated your kindness and constantly hurt you. I saw the album. I understand everything about the lake house now. Such a wonderful gift, and I trampled on it. Mary's expression wavered. It was clear she was trying to hold back her own tears. Me too, Carol stepped forward. I was a terrible mother. I never properly valued your talent or efforts, always comparing you with Deborah. Now I see how special and talented you are. Mary stood speechless. Perhaps she had dreamed of this moment for years. But now that it was reality, she seemed unsure how to respond. Please give us another chance, Deborah begged. Let us start over as a family. After a long silence, Mary quietly said, I sold the cottage. The color drained from Deborah's face. You sold it? Yes, Mary said calmly. After you threw away the album like that, I thought it was for the best. Deborah looked devastated. Her guilt deepened. Not only had she trampled on her sister's gift, but she had also forever lost the opportunity to make amends. But that's not important anymore, Deborah said in a small voice. What I want isn't the house. It's you, sis. You and our healed relationship. Mary's expression softened. Really? Really, Deborah answered sincerely. I've always been showy, surrounded by material things, but that was to fill my own emptiness. You were different. You always knew what truly matters. Carol nodded through her tears. We may not deserve to ask for forgiveness. But could you give us one more chance? Mary covered her face with both hands and took a deep breath. For a long time, she was silent. When she finally lowered her hands, her eyes showed determination. Trust isn't built in a day, she finally said. There's a process. Let's start with building trust. I'll do anything, Deborah said earnestly. Mary nodded slightly. Then let's begin. Step by step. Richard's face showed relief. He placed his hand on his wife's shoulder, gently supporting her. Thank you, Mary. Deborah truly regrets what happened. I know, Mary said quietly. That's why I'm giving us another chance. That night, the four spent a long time in the museum cafe. They discussed painful memories, hidden feelings, and hopes for the future. It was a painful conversation, but also the beginning of healing. Deborah and her mother apologized repeatedly and pledged to repair their relationship with Mary. At the end of the evening, Mary gently approached Deborah and, for the first time, placed her hand on her belly. "My niece or nephew," she said softly. "Have you chosen a name?" "It's a girl," Deborah smiled. "We're thinking of naming her Lily." "That's a beautiful name," a warm smile spread across Mary's face. It was a genuine smile the family hadn't seen in a long time. Lily Kennedy. It has a nice ring to it. 6 months later, snow gently covered the streets of Boston. In the living room of Mary's apartment, a small flame danced in the fireplace, casting a warm light throughout the room. The windowsill featured modest yet tasteful Christmas decorations, and the walls were adorned with works by local artists that Mary had selected. The doorbell rang, and Mary walked briskly to answer. Opening the door, she found Deborah, her mother Carol, and 5-month-old Lily. "Merry Christmas," Mary smiled softly. "Merry Christmas, sis," Deborah returned a sincere smile. In her arms was Lily, wrapped in a pink blanket. The baby looked up at Mary with big blue eyes. "She's really starting to look like you," Carol said as she entered, carrying several small gift bags. "You think so?" "I think she looks like Richard," Mary said, gently touching the baby's cheek. The three moved to the living room and sat on the sofa in front of the fireplace. Over the past 6 months, they had been rebuilding their relationship step by step. Deborah wrote weekly letters to Mary, sometimes including handmade gifts. Carol regularly hosted family lunches, cherishing time with both her daughters. "Sis, do you think we can continue moving forward together?" Deborah asked anxiously while holding Lily. "I still can't forgive myself for what happened that day." "The past is the past," Mary said warmly. "We're creating new memories now." After dinner, Mary led them to the living room and pointed to a large box placed under the Christmas tree. "Open it," she said quietly. Deborah nervously opened the box and took out a familiar photo album. It had been beautifully restored and new photos added. Turning to the last page, she found new pictures of the lakeside cottage, the familiar key, and a new deed of transfer. "I never sold the cottage," Mary smiled gently. "I just remodeled it to suit your taste. I even made a room for Lily." Deborah and her mother were speechless with surprise and emotion. "This is," Carol finally managed to say. "A place for your family," Mary continued. "What I want is for Lily not to have the kind of relationship we had. I want her to know from the beginning that she has a family full of love." The three embraced, tears flowing. Lily reached out her tiny hand and tightly grasped Mary's finger. "Tomorrow, let's all go to the lake," Mary suggested. Lily's first visit to the cottage. The beginning of a new family tradition. Outside the window, snow continued to fall quietly. The pain and wounds of the past weren't completely healed, but a time of true healing and reconciliation had begun. In the warm light filling Mary's room, 3 generations of women were beginning to forge a new bond.